Devon Dampier win the Heisman Trophy in 2025. We're going to discuss on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time listening to this show, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. My name is JT Wistrcill, and on today's show, let's talk about if Devon Dampier can win the Heisman. It sounds crazy, but when you think about it, he's got at least a shot. I'm not saying it's a great shot, but it's a shot. And then we're also going to talk about who exactly is Devon Dampier. I was able to speak with some of the Sports 360 guys down at Big 12 Media Days. Devon Dampier grew up in Arizona, played his high school football there. So want to know a little bit more about, okay, who is QB1 Caleb? These guys also covered Caleb Lomu too. So make sure you guys stick around for my conversation there. But first, want to start by talking about Devon Dampier and why I do think he is a Heisman sleeper. The Athletic actually even did a list out and said, like, hey, he would be one of our, like, they went, trust me, not one of the top picks, but you got down the list eventually. And Devon Dampier is a guy who pops up. I think he's easily one of the top 30 players in the country that I look at and say, okay, there's a path to them for Heisman contention. Some of you might think it's crazy. That's crazy. But honestly, he's got a really good shot. Like, even compared to, if I think of other players in the Big 12 that could win a Heisman, right? I mean, Sawyer Robertson from Baylor jumps in my head. I think there's a chance in Avery Johnson could be up there too. I don't think Rocco Beck has that dynamic ability. We'll talk about that you need in order to be a Heisman contender, right? But so right away, I'm trying to, Sam Levitt obviously up there too, right? But Dampier would be up there because Dampier is something those guys don't. We'll talk about what that is in a moment. But I absolutely think Devon Dampier has a chance to be one of the finalists in New York. And I think he could very well be the best quarterback in this Big 12 conference. I think, is that the most likely outcome? Maybe not with how good Levitt is, but I do think he's going to end up being a top 3 quarterback in this conference. And that means one of the Sawyer Robertsons, Levitt, Johnson, like I think he's going to end up being better than one of those guys, which sounds crazy as we sit here right now. But when you look back on the season he had and how he's only getting better, it's easy to see why a lot of people think Devon Dampier can have a monster year with this Utah team. A reminder of what he did last year: 2,768 yards passing. He had 12 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, but he had 19 rushing touchdowns, so over 30 touchdowns. He had a top 35 QBR in the country too. He had over 1,000 yards rushing, was one of the only players in college football last season with 1,000 yards passing, or 2,000 yards passing, and 1,000 yards rushing too. Just an incredibly dynamic and dual threat athlete, right? I mean, you look at the game against Wyoming, he had 200 yards there, 193 yards against Washington State, Hawaii. Like, this is a guy, and even like against Arizona, he had 130 yards rushing against a P4 team. Devon Dampier, even in those P4 games, put defenses on notice. Devon Dampier is a guy who last year only John Mateer had as many forced missed tackles as Devon Dampier did. He's an incredibly athletic and dynamic playmaker. And that right there is something that's key, right? Dynamic playmaker. Because so often we see the guys who come up in the biggest moments and the biggest wow plays are the ones who actually end up winning the Heisman Trophy. And Devon Dampier is capable of making those wow plays. Ari Wasserman of On3 on my show last week said that he feels Devon Dampier is one of the most exciting players in college football this season. You know who's exciting? Whoever wins the Heisman Trophy. Ashton Genty and Travis Hunter last year were the 2 most exciting players in the sport, and they were battling it out right there, right? You know, you look at some of the recent Heisman Trophy winners, and some of them did sneak up on us. Jaden Daniels, a lot of people thought he'd be good. They didn't realize how good he was going to be, right? You look at some of the Kyler Murray, a Baker Mayfield, even a Lamar Jackson, right? Those weren't necessarily even the highest recruits, right? So you might look at it and say, well, is Devon Dampier, can he reach that elite level status, that talent? Like, what's his ceiling and top floor? Well, you have guys like Lamar and Baker who were not ranked in the top 300 nationally coming out of high school. I mean, Baker was at one point a walk-on, and eventually they went on to win the Heisman Trophy. And what do those guys have in common? Well, not only did they prove, obviously, to win at a very high level, but they came through in big moments and made some incredible plays. And I think Devon Dampier is capable of making those incredible plays. Devon Dampier, despite being behind a G5 offensive line, playing a couple of P4 teams, was still only sacked. And yes, the schedule was mostly P4 teams, but he was still only sacked just 5 times last season. So what does that mean? Devon Dampier is able to buy time, improvise, and just make something happen. And that's one of the things we love most about football is when things don't go to plan, what can the quarterback, what can the offense, like what's going to happen next? Those are the most miraculous, amazing plays. Those are the ones that get trending and blow up on social media, and you see them on SportsCenter top plays. Devon Dampier is capable of making those types of plays. He's capable of breaking off a few tackles, making a miss, and then firing a strike downfield and finding his guy open in the end zone. I think at some point this season, Devon Dampier, and I think actually I should say a couple times, Devon Dampier is going to find his way on SportsCenter because he's going to put defenders on skates. He's just a miraculous athlete, a guy who led the country last year in yards per carry. And I think he's in for a special season and a special year. And I think Utah is going to reap the benefits of his dynamic abilities. I think you're going to see a lot of just, wow, how did he do that? He's a magician back there. I think Devon Dampier is going to turn a lot of heads. I think he's going to improve as a passer. I think he's going to cut down on his turnovers. I think he's once again going to have 30-something touchdowns in total this year. Utah will take the ball out of his hands some to give to Wayshawn Parker in that run game, but Devon Dampier is this team's best playmaker. So you got to be careful how much you do take the ball out of his hand. And I do think Jason Beck, being the offensive coordinator with him last year in an offense that averaged top 4 yardage per game in the country a season ago, the results are going to be big. He has a supporting cast in the offensive line where it's not just going to be on his shoulders, but some of the passing game may fall on his shoulders because some of the guys may not be able to win right away. I hope they're able to. And some recent positive trends have been coming out of spring ball about Utah's wide receiver core, but we've been saying that for years, and we've seen that group fail to produce at the level we were hoping that they would be able to. So I look at this Utah team and I look at this receiving core and I say, hey, a lot of it might be on Devon Dampier to buy time, let someone get open, and then make something happen. So I do think Devon Dampier has a chance to win the Heisman Trophy this year. It is not the most likely. He's nowhere near the favorite, and Utah's going to have to win a decent amount in order for him to do it. But you don't need to be the best team in the country in order to have your player on your team win the Heisman. It definitely helps. But if Devon Dampier can have the type of season where maybe he rushes for 1,000 yards again and throws for a certain number, I definitely think there's a chance that he could be a guy who he's coming down to the wire in the Heisman race and maybe even wins it, because there are just not many quarterbacks in the country like him Devon Dampier has a chance to be must-see TV this fall. When I just mentioned the athleticism, the ability to keep plays alive, when guys are just look like they're moving at a different speed. Devon Dampier is not as fast as Percy Harvin, and I don't even know if he's as elusive as maybe a Kyler Murray was, right? But you had to tune in and see what those guys were going to do. Caleb Williams was another example of that in college. I know Utah got their licks in on Caleb, right? But I always enjoyed watching Caleb Williams as a football player, just in terms of, wow, look how talented he is and the plays he can make on the move with throwing across his body. Like Devon Dampier, he's not as accurate as Caleb, but he can make some incredible throws and incredible plays. And when you can make those plays and put up the numbers, and Devon Dampier is going to put up really good numbers this year, he's going to have a chance to be in NYC for that Heisman presentation. So I do think he's a sleeper for award. I think there is a chance that he could win it. Is it the most likely? No, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying you cannot rule it out, because there's been a lot of other years where we've looked at Heisman Trophy races at the end of the year, and at the start of it, you were like, oh, I'm going to rule this guy out, but you can't do that with Devon Dampier. So we're really excited to see the season Devon Dampier is going to have, and I hope he surprises everyone. I think I'll say this at least. I'm not going to sit here and predict him to be a Heisman finalist right now. I think he finishes in the top 10 voting for the award. I will say that. I think he's going to have that type of a year. Will be interesting to look back and see how this video ages. One thing that aged very well was scouts and recruits who were very high, or recruiting evaluators who were very high on Devon Dampier and Caleb Lomu. Was able to sit down with some of the Arizona Sports 360 guys too to talk about Devon Dampier, Caleb Lomu's background, also a little bit on the Pac-12 versus Big 12 debate. Looking back a year ago, there were all those questions about how would those teams translate. They obviously translated very well. We're going to be talking about all of that in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. College football is right around the corner, and so is the NFL season 2, and FanDuel has you covered. Even while we wait for football to return, you can get in on the summer action, right? Whether it's baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. Also, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. There are Plenty of odds out there for the college football season, NFL season too. And you have live games to bet on right now, whether it's MLB, MLS, or golf. You can head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. Excited to be joined now by Jordan Ham and Jordan Spurgeon of Sports 360 AZ. Talked about Devon Dampier a little bit, Utah's newest quarterback. You guys not only just got to talk to him today, you covered him from his high school days. You followed the rise. What stood out about Devon Dampier, the high school player? When did you realize he was going to be special, and just how good do you think he can be with Utah?
Devon was on the rise towards the beginning of his high school career, but he really took off his senior year. He was with the Saguaro Sabercats, which is a power out in Scottsdale, and was coached by a guy named Jason Mons, who's now the tight ends coach at Arizona State. And because of transfer rules, Devon had to sit out the first 5 games of the season, and then came in and was kind of they had an established starter, but Coach Mons ended up putting him in the postseason, and they won the Open Division that year, which is the highest level. And there's a game in particular against Hamilton. The starting quarterback for that team is Nico Marchiol, who's fighting for the West Virginia starting job right now. And it was just a duel, and you just saw Devon take over the game with his legs. He made some really timely throws, and that's where it was like, okay, everything we've heard about this guy, we're fully seeing in fruition. So in terms of an athlete at the quarterback position, like, he's definitely way up there. And there have been some really good quarterbacks I've seen in my time over there. And he's just continued to develop. We saw it at New Mexico. Now you have him in Salt Lake with his offensive coordinator. I think there's a nice setting for really kind of take off here this year.
Yeah, I mean, Devon is, quite frankly, just that dude. You know, last year you were there. He almost beat Arizona single-handedly at New Mexico, and that's impressive. I know Arizona had a down year, but going from that gap of power forward to other schools and being able to do that is impressive. And so seeing him develop over the years has been great. You know, a lot of people, they'll put doubts on players like him and say, well, you know, maybe not the NFL traits that everybody's looking for, but he's the gamer. He can get it done with his, he can make family throws, and he's a competitor at the highest level. 6 championships under Jason Mons, and Devon was one of the best players that, you know, we've had a chance to talk to Jason, that he's ever coached before. And that says a lot, because Jason Mons is a guy that's going to be a coordinator and a head coach one day in college football. He's one of the smartest minds that we've been around. And so Devon Dampier, you know, I've always said it, I've been in Arizona for 5 years. Him and Damon Williams Jr., who's at Washington, are the 2 best quarterbacks I've seen. Damon, I think, just won the accuracy challenge at the Manning camp recently. I mean, those 2 guys are unbelievable, and Devon left a legacy there. He's going to do the same thing at Utah. He's going to continue to just ball out, be a leader, have fun. He's going to have so much fun on the sidelines. He is known for that. I saw him vlogging today. You'll see a vlog on their socials of Devon Dampier just being himself with his guys, and that's really cool to see.
Devon Dampier is just one Utah football player who is from the state of Arizona for high school football. Lance Holtzclaw and especially Caleb Lomu. What can you tell me about those guys? And especially just, I mean, Lomu's been so much fun to watch him have this success, obviously.
Yeah, Utah and BYU really recruit Arizona well. So there's probably like a dozen guys on Utah who come from the state, but just to highlight a couple of those, Caleb Lomu, he was a monster. And what you see is at Utah is what we saw at Highland High School in Gilbert. And he was just one of those kind of steady guys who just saw the trajectory keep going and going and going with him, where he became an All-American, and he became one of those highly touted guys and found a spot at Utah. And then with Lance Holtzclaw, one of the best athletes I've seen come through Arizona. He played tight end. He played defensive end for Desert Ridge out in Mesa. Saw him on the 7th circuit, and that was just absolutely silly to see that. And that speaks to his athleticism, because he couldn't use his physicality in that realm. But he's a guy who just has a nose for the football. Had a good opportunity at Washington when he got on the field. He took advantage. I hope that he gets an expanded opportunity at Utah, because I think he could really wreck some stuff in the backfield. But I know that they have kind of revamped the edge position at Utah. They aren't short on options, so we'll see how much he's able to find the field.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking on them, I mean, they were all good people when we had interactions with them. I think that always stands out to me first. You realize in high school the kids that are just raised right, and they're really going to kind of carry a locker room, and those are the kind of guys that help build the culture at Utah. I know the culture is well established there. It's a big physical team, and, you know, all 3 guys we've talked about, they are big. They're physical. They're going to have a great time out there. All of them, you know, potentially could be Sunday players. And I think that's something cool to have under one roof at Utah. And it's definitely going to be fun to watch from afar this year.
Dampier and Lomu, two of the most important players on this roster, and it's going to be exciting to see what this Utah team can do, but it's just going to be exciting to see how the rest of the Big 12 plays out. Guys, we were talking before we jumped on. I just still think it was so funny how last year, and Utah is still like the villain in this conference, but also everyone was just mad that a Pac-12 team was being picked to win the Big 12, and then we saw that exactly happen. Just wasn't Utah. In fact, it was kind of even crazier because it was a team that was picked dead last, which I guess in some ways the conference disliked so much, they did away with the conference media poll. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that whole thing? And also just the fact that clearly the Pac-12 did still set these teams up for success in the college football landscape.
It was a matter of chaos. It was a chaos conference, and that perfectly encapsulates it. Where, yes, the new kid on the block, Utah Utes picked to be number one, ASU dead bottom. Utah was a lot closer to the bottom than the top, and then ASU did what they did. And, I mean, we cover ASU pretty darn closely. Nobody anticipated what that was going to be. So, and that's just set the tone, and I have a feeling we're going to see something pretty similar here this year of just like teams are going to rise and fall, and, you know, the beauty of college football.
Yeah. And people forget, too, the last year of the Pac-12 there, that was one of the best Pac-12 seasons that we had in a long time. There was almost two teams in Washington and Oregon making the CFP that year, and it was still a 4-team playoff. And it was one of the programs under, you know, the last couple of years that had success against a team like Washington. They were built for these moments, and I think we were definitely surprised to see them go from 3 wins to that. You know, you expected maybe they can get to 6 wins. Kenny kind of was building a culture and being there day to day. We kind of saw that, but yeah, to win the whole dang thing, I mean, that was nobody expected that, but I think ultimately it's good for the Big 12.
I agree. And one of the things I've also talked about, I feel like people got mad when I entered the Big 12. It's like, guys, the Pac-12 as presently constructed last year before its demise was better than the current Big 12. When you lose Texas and Oklahoma, you are not the conference you were. No team has gone to back-to-back Big 12 title games outside of Texas and Oklahoma since Colorado in 04 and 05. So don't tell me like this is the same conference. I still feel like the old Pac-12 was stronger than the new Big 12, the biggest reasons being Oregon, USC, those ones are still in there, in addition to the Arizonas, Arizona States, the Utahs, those other teams that are capable of breaking through.
Yeah, and I think with the Big 12 in its current iteration, it's just so wide open where you have so many great teams that are probably going to go 8-4 because you're just catching strays each and every week. And, you know, I heard some of the coaches talking today where it's like some conferences you can go in and have your B and C game and you still win. This conference, you really have to bring it every single week. So that goes back just to what we were talking about with the Chaos Conference.
I mean, for the most part, depending on non-con, pretty much it's going to be a 2-loss team winning the Big 12 most years, whether it's 2 conference losses or whether it's just 2 losses in general, because top to bottom, it is that way. And college guys, you know, people forget they're 18 to 22 or maybe even 24 now, you know, as we get towards the end of the COVID years and stuff like that. But to have your A game every single week is very difficult. And in the SEC, the way they schedule things, you don't necessarily have to have your A game every single week to win. You know, when you're playing lower teams in the SEC or you're scheduling your FCS opponent at the end of the season, you don't have to bring it. But in the Big 12, you have to. So it makes it very unique. And not having a current blue blood, it does give the opportunity for a program to maybe become one of the next college blue bloods. I know Kenny Dillingham's talked about it. It's a little early for that, but there is that opportunity the next few years. But if history repeats itself, that's the beauty of this conference. There isn't a true team that's going to run away and just win this conference every single year.
You don't need to have your A game to beat the Citadel in week 8.
November 8th games where it's just like, oh yeah, let's just gear up for the Iron Bowl. We're fine.
I think if the question is, as you were kind of mentioning, like who is poised to be the new, like Texas Oklahoma, the new blue blood, the new powerhouse, the most consistent program of the Big 12. I think there's a lot of options. I'll get you guys to take on something I think about Arizona State in a moment. I think honestly, even though they haven't won yet, I'd lean Texas Tech right now just because of those NIL funds and resources. It's a top 3 transfer portal class. Like it's hard for me to ignore that. Like if I had to pick one, I know BYU's done some things, but this is Locked On Utes, so I'm not going to say BYU, obviously. I'd love it if it could be Utah, but even though they're trying to get some of these NIL things under control, I feel like it's going to be very hard to keep Tech down. And if you had to say, like, if I had to predict the next 10 years who wins the most Big 12 titles, I might say Tech.
I think they certainly have that piece of the equation with the house settlement coming in, the way things have kind of reworked. It does kind of feel like certain things are getting damped down. It's one of those, can you buy a team that is conference championship, or does continuity still matter? And I think that's what ASU is trying to play for. They return just about everybody that they can that isn't NFL draft eligible. So they're one that sticks out to me. I think Utah, I'm really bullish on Utah. I love Devon Dampier. When you have the 2 offensive tackles that they do, that's what every college wants in the nation, to find those high quality tackles, be able to develop them, not have to go in the portal and go overspend for a guy, but develop those. And then Kansas State is one that I really like as well. Avery Johnson, I think, is going to take a nice step. And so we'll see. But I'd say those probably top 4 or so really stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean, and double that, just being here at Big 12, we talked to Dampier earlier. He looks bigger. He was always a big guy in high school. You know, you look at Avery Johnson. He's filled out a lot over the last couple of years. He's got a lot of starting experience. So you're seeing the growth because of those guys having continuity. But I agree. I mean, those 3 teams definitely have a legit shot to win the Big 12. Utah, if things go right, if Devon Dampier lives up to his potential, don't see surprised if they're in the running for a Big 12 championship. You know, Colorado, if the quarterback situation is as good as Dion has talked about, they could be a team at least in the hunt like they were last year. I mean, they still got a lot of talent. You know, it's still a weakness in the trenches out there, and that's where you win games the most. But when you have enough skill players, you can sometimes overcome that in a conference like this where there really is not one true favorite.
Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. They have that surprising insight. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save even more. Also, that easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. You can take control of your finance with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. When you head over to Monarch Money and use that code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, you can head over to Monarch Money today.
If people want more Arizona coverage, please let them know, guys, where they need to head over to.
Yeah, we're over at Sports 360 AZ, whether it is the high school stuff that we were talking about, a couple of years down the road, there might be some Utah Utes that are playing at the high school level that Jordan's covering and some of our other team. And then we do a lot of ASU, U of A, even GCU, especially on the basketball front for men's and women's as well. So we try to find the unique angles and the stories no one's talking about. So that's where you can find us, sports360az.com.
Jordan, thank you guys so much for joining me.
Excited to be joined on this show by Alex Markham. We're going to talk about some names to watch for this fall that got people behind the scenes at Utah buzzing after spring ball. This coming
Hunter
season.
Andrews.
Okay, yeah, just go. I would say briefly say it, and then we'll talk about it more on another episode.
Yeah, Hunter Andrews. He's gonna be a stud, man. I can't even call him Brant Keithy 2.0 because he might end up doing more than Brant.
That's okay. If you're saying without injuries, that's a lot.
Yes. Well, what I'm saying, I'm not saying from a pure stat wise. I'm just saying what he brings to the table, right?
Okay.
Because Brant was a specialty running back where he'd take the end arounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hunter wants to run it up the middle and pop somebody in the damn face.
Yeah.
Hunter can play as a pure running back. He can play as a pure tight end. So he's extremely fun to watch. He's gonna cause some major problems for everybody this year. A name that I'm really intrigued about that was popping a little bit in spring ball, but I just think it's gonna pop more and more when fall camp hits, and especially because where the position groups kind of are right now. Carson Kaufusi is a guy that I think is gonna explode, whether it's mid-season towards the tail end. He's going to be a freshman to watch. He's an absolute stud. He's 6'6". He's going to be close to 300 pounds by the time the season starts. He's got those Kaufusi genes, and man, he's special. So Utah needs somebody like him to step up at defensive tackle, and I think that they're both going to benefit from each other from that. So there's an offensive name for you and a defensive name for you to watch.
Perfect. Alex, you're the man. Thanks for coming on. Big thanks to Jordan Spurgeon and Jordan Ham of Sports 360 AZ for coming on and talking about those Utah guys' background, a little bit on that Pac-12, Big 12 too. So that's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll continue to keep you covered. Fall camp, we got media availabilities tomorrow to discuss. So make sure you guys tune in to Locked On Utes then if you're in the market for a second listen, because we do greatly appreciate you making this show your first listen and view of the day. Make sure you check out the Locked On College Football Podcast with Spencer McLaughlin. And we'll see you on tomorrow's Locked On Utes.